video to see what it looks like inside the platen mechanism. Okay, I have removed the platen. Here is the center bolt and how that assembly should look. There's a small pin visible right there as well to the washer, the spring, and here is the platen. Taken off as we talked about, just slipped off. You do have to cycle the press a little bit because the side arm will be in the way when you first try to lift it up, so you do this will actually be in the way a little bit. You cycle the press a little, and here is what it looks like under the platen after it's been removed. This right here is the top wedge. You can see the slant, and it's moving up as I move the lever. The bottom one works the same way. So if these are on a pivot, if I just move this back like so, you get to see that the top screw is working on a wedge that fully extends to the both sides, and here is the incline, and here is the incline that work against this incline and this incline to adjust the platen, the whole top of the platen, in or out. But we have to also see what's underneath this piece, because that's where the springs and the smaller wedges that are operated by the individual corner screws are located. And this just lifts out. You will feel a spring, which should be located right there. You can see that that spring is actually working against one of the left-hand wedge right there. There's also a spring operating on the right-hand wedge, which is, if I take this spring out, there is a spring operating this side wedge, which has got a small stop actually cast right into the casting itself. So if I screw in on the corner bolt, it's going to move this wedge in that direction toward the spring. The spring is resisting it to keep it against the bolt, so that if I unscrew the bolt, the spring will push the wedge back out again. This wedge just is in loose because it is being acted upon when I install the other piece. So this is exactly, it's difficult to photograph the lower one, but this is exactly how the lower one should look. And for reinstallation, you slip the spring and just lay it down in, and then reinstall. Here is the stop on the top wedge that we're going to put right against the spring and then push in. Oops. My lower wedge popped out. That's no problem. Lower wedge, spring, top wedge. I'm going to hold it down with my other finger. This is just a little difficult with one hand. And then we take the throw-off lever surface like that. Now let me stop the video for a second. Okay, so let's just review this again. Over on the left-hand side, underneath the two long wedges, one of which is attached to the throw-off lever. No matter which style throw-off lever you have, you swing that back, then you carefully remove the long wedge right underneath it that is being acted upon by the top thumb screw. Underneath that should be two springs. One that operates the long wedge and one that operates the right hand single wedge. The left hand single wedge is just put in loose. And we'll look at it one more time. We'll swing this out of the way. We now see the long wedge, which is acted upon by the thumb screw, and it has the two tapered flat bearing areas that act on here and here up. And I'll remove that. Down below, underneath that long wedge, which I've just removed, and we're putting the side with the stop down, is the spring that acts upon it, and then a single wedge on the left hand side and a single wedge on the right hand side, and we use a shorter spring to push the wedge against the adjusting screw out here. The exact same thing occurs on the bottom. For reassembly, and let's just look at this wedge one more time. The individual wedge, we're putting the flat that I'm touching with my finger right now down, and the tapered side, this side, up. In it goes right against the screw. Here's the screw coming through. And then I'm installing the spring, the long top wedge, excuse me, right here. I'm putting the stop on the bottom of the long wedge against the spring, and then using two fingers to hold it down and insert it so that it is butting up against the top adjusting screw. Back together. My hands are so greasy. Hang on. And you can see that this still now will easily go back and forth. This should be all clean and well greased, by the way. Notice mine has you know, a lot of grease on it. It is just an automotive type of grease, not a critical as to exactly what kind, but better to have a grease than an oil, as the grease will last longer on these surfaces, which are not accessible once you close the whole thing and assemble it again. So that's what it looks like. Now I'm going to turn the video off and reinstall in the reverse order the platen back on. Okay, so the platen is back on.